regional board from the Northeast region. Jake is a past president of the Massachusetts School Committee Association, and Massachusetts, like Rhode Island, we call them school committees. Everywhere else they call them school boards. So we're kind of the outliers when it comes to what we call ourselves here. But Jake is a good friend. He's going to bring you some news about things that are happening on the national level with NSBA and what's going on in Congress. He frequently testifies in front of congressional committees and is a good resource for any of you that want to know what's happening with the National School Board Association. Jake?
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Tim, for that introduction. I'm not going to get into too many details about what's going on at the national level. You can certainly read what's going on in the news, but I did want to make a few brief comments about school safety, since this is the theme of this year's conference. But before I begin, just want to thank Tim and the Rhode Island group for their hospitality year in and year out. Your president this year, John Saviano. I was thinking about John as I was getting dressed this morning, because John always kind of ribs me a little bit for dressing down to every occasion that I need to speak at. I typically don't wear a tie, typically don't wear a suit. So this morning, I decided to impress John and actually put on a tie, put on a dress shirt and a suit. And as I'm driving down from Western Massachusetts from my school district, I have a large Venti coffee from Starbucks, and I subsequently spill most of that all over the front of my shirt over here. So I'm glad that Captain Borik's colleagues weren't kind of witnessing me driving on 146 as I'm trying to apply water to get the stains out coming in. But this just goes to show, John, why I don't dress up, because really, I'll make a mess of myself if I do. But I'd like to bring greetings on behalf of the National School Boards Association and our two other Northeast region representatives who Lydia Tadone from Connecticut is typically here with you. She's actually traveling in California right now. And our other regional director, Nandi Soku, who's actually from the Virgin Islands. And so the Northeast region represents the 11 states within the Northeast region, plus the Virgin Islands over in the Caribbean. So the three of us represent you and the other 11 states and territory on the NSBA Board of Directors. I'm so glad to see my predecessor here on the board, Scott Mueller, who is from Rhode Island, who is your incoming president I see on there. Nice to see you, Scott. But I really want to speak a little bit about some of the happenings at the national level on school safety. John, Marianne, Scott, and myself were in San Antonio just about a month ago talking about some of the issues that are impacting our schools. How the National School Boards Association operates, we're a dues-driven organization. And we're a dues-driven organization that comes from our membership. And how we advocate up on Capitol Hill, how we advocate in the courts, how we advocate publicly is all based on things that are happening in the 50 states and territories in this nation. And so we spent a significant amount of time at the first day of our conference going over resolutions and beliefs and policies that were submitted by other state associations to really form our advocacy agenda as an organization. One thing that we've had for the last 4 or 5 years is a resolution that's been sponsored by the Massachusetts Association and led by the Connecticut Association on School Safety, talking about some of the issues that were addressed earlier today when we're speaking about the safety and security of our students within our schools. There was an amendment to actually change that school safety provision to actually say that we don't believe arming teachers is the right thing to do. That unfortunately failed before the delegate assembly, but the school safety conversation continues. We talk about those school resource officers that we need in our buildings. We talk about those federal grant programs that can help make our school districts safer year in and year out. The delegate assembly also passed a belief in policy that added gender identity as a protected class for our students, for our employees, and that will add to our marching orders when we go up to Capitol Hill. But from a Massachusetts perspective, when we're talking about school safety, one of the things we talk about a lot, and I'm glad it was brought up earlier today, is our SROs, our school resource officers. And most of our school districts in Massachusetts have those school resource officers. We don't have them in every building like most states because there is a large cost to it. But the big conversation that we're talking about in Massachusetts is getting that proper training for the SROs. You know, SROs have been around for a while, but training and the professional development is actually something that's becoming newer and actually is growing right now because you want to have someone that's properly trained in the buildings. We created this course for SROs in Massachusetts based on an SRO who actually is from the King Philip School District, which is located in Plainville, Massachusetts, not far from Rhode Island. They have a very dynamic SRO who's developed a professional development program that I'm sure would be happy to share with Rhode Island. So if you have SROs that want to be trained, that want to be up to date, we'd be happy to provide some of that information. One of the great things about being in a small state and being in small regions is the ability to collaborate. The special relationship that Massachusetts has with Connecticut and with Rhode Island, we collaborate together on just about all of the things that we discuss. We all have similar, smaller school districts, unlike those, 30 to 50,000 student school districts that are out in the West and the South. Our school districts tend to be small. They tend to be locally governed. They tend to be more relationship driven. And that's certainly reflected in what we do working amongst the 3 states in southern New England, and we certainly want to continue that trend in the future. Just a few more things about what's going on nationally with the National School Boards Association. We are in discussions right now about building our advocacy agenda going forward of what we're going to be talking to Congress about. I'm glad that John had his early presentation on some of the changes that are happening in the workforce. One of the things that we are proud to be focused in on is educating the whole child, educating the child that's on there of not a particular job that might not be here 5 or 10 years from now, as John pointed out, but really instilling that lifelong learning ability. And so our advocacy agenda is really focused in on supporting our students, not just for a career that might be here today, but really opening up opportunities for the future. We're very much concerned with some of the rhetoric coming out of the National Department of Education, and we are monitoring that situation closely. But our friends on Capitol Hill have luckily come to our rescue on a lot of different things. But one of the things that we're most focused in on is not just on the 6 hours that students are in our buildings and the school policies that affect us directly, but all the rest of the services that go to support our students and their families, because we understand that the time that a student spends out of the classroom, that they're at when they're in their home life, when they're outside of school, impacts their ability to perform. So ensuring that there are those support services outside of education to support our students is something that we're focused in on as an association. But I just recommend this in closing. If there are public policy issues that are impacting you here in Rhode Island and you want to see them impacted at the national level or brought up for discussion, talk to your officers on the Rhode Island Association. Submit resolutions, submit beliefs and policies. As I said before, we're a members-driven organization, and we want to hear from our members. Even though Rhode Island is a small state compared to other states, you have the same rights and responsibilities to submit things that you want changed at the national level to be part of our advocacy agenda, and I'd encourage you to stay active of what's happening on Capitol Hill. I'd encourage you to visit the NSBA website. I encourage you to follow them on social media. They tend to be very much more engaging right now and having members contact their members of Congress. You have a 4-member delegation. It's a small state. It's built on relationships. Be active with your members of Congress. Tell them the issues that are impacting your school district. Talk about the funding challenges you're facing, and it'll give them a better idea as we build our kind of advocacy agenda that your members of Congress are in line with what's happening in local school districts. So once again, thank you, Tim, thank you, John, thank you, Mary Ann, for inviting me here today to say a few words about what's going on at the national level, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your conference.